So it was my great pleasure to welcome DC writer Jeremy Adams of Thinking Critical YouTube for the first time. I've been a big fan for a long time. Congratulations on the recent exclusive contract. That was absolutely awesome and well earned.
Thank you. Thank you. Whether it's well earned or not, I never know. I just put my head down and work. And, obviously this is something I've loved since I was a little kid. So if they're going to give me more opportunity to do it, I'm all for it, man.
So you were a lifelong comic book reader.
Yeah. My dad drew some DC comics briefly before my parents were divorced. My parents were divorced when I was about 5, but I remember the first thing I remember was my dad did something with comics, and he had done something in DC had a thing called Ghosts. It was like Ghosts with Dr. 13. I think he did a couple of those. And then years later, I found out he had drawn some Captain Atom in the 80s, but I didn't know that until like 5 years ago, which was mind blowing to me. I didn't realize he had done so probably he had drawn about 12 issues of comics through the 70s and 80s between doing all, sorts of other art things. But that definitely was, I just remember Batman. I remember Spider-Man, Underoos, watching the Hulk, Mego toys. I had that Batman Mego Batmobile, which is like awesome. It's not as cool as I think the Superpowers one, but it was really, really cool. But yeah, I've loved comics my entire life. And it wasn't, I don't know how to describe it, but like I collected as much as you could collect back then. I didn't have a comic book store in town. There was a comic book store that showed up for 6 months and then immediately left the small town I was in. But you'd spin a racket, you'd find old used bookstores. I was definitely into quantity, not quality. So I have all the New Universe titles because I could get a ton of those like secondhand than I could get a new one. And I never even thought about the people that created it. It wasn't until Frank Miller's Dark Knight that my dad had given me under the table when I visited him once.
Don't tell your mom.
Yeah, didn't tell my mom. And it was like, oh, Frank Miller was like a name. And a lot of the stuff retroactively, I'd go back and I'm like, oh, these are all the books I loved. And they were all Mark Grunwald books, Fabian Nicieza. I don't know how to say it. Obviously the Justice League International was like life-changing to me when that came out. I was like, a comic can be funny. Like I was so flipped out by it could be funny. But yeah, I've loved comics forever. Ever and ever.
The 80s were the best decade to grow up in. It was so much fun. There wasn't too much oversight, so you could get away with a lot of stuff.
Yes.
I wasn't so much of a comic book reader.
Yeah.
I was in all kinds of nerdy stuff. Star Wars was probably my big thing. I actually didn't start reading comics till my 30s.
Wow.
I was in all the nerdy stuff but the comic books. But the 80s were the best.
It was awesome because I thought about this a lot, and I feel like an old man talking about it, and I've been chastised a little bit because we're actually the older generation now that has money to spend on things. So there's a little bit of nostalgia that we get to put money into. Mm-hmm. But like when I was a kid, Star Wars in particular, our lightsabers were literally just flashlights. It's like, oh, and there was so much not explained that we spent so much time imagining what it could be. And I didn't know, you would know the name of a ancillary character just because of the Kenner toy.
The description on the box. And,
yeah. And even G.I. Joe or whatever, like you had a very limited function, and it would be like you would watch, like I watched G.I. Joe. I remember I've never been more mad than it was like the Serpentor saga where they were trying to get the DNA for the different Serpentor to make Serpentor. And it was like, I missed an episode. And missing an episode, you're done.
Coming back.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I can never find it again, and that was everything. So there was so much imagination around the stuff I loved that was really fun. You would go out and play Star Wars. You would go out and pretend. And that was so cool. And even in comic books, I really wish they would do this more. They don't do it as much as I want. The editorial notes were so helpful. It would be like, as in Amazing Spider-Man 33. And you'd be like, well, I got to go find that. I got to go, you're hunting it down or going to the library, trying to check out books to try to reference it or whatever. I love that piece of comic book. But yeah, it was great. I loved growing up then. It was weirdly idyllic. I feel bad for my kids a little bit. I try to protect them from the outside world, but the reality is late 70s through the 80s till probably until 2001, relatively safe and harmonious. I thought we, won everything. The Berlin Wall went down. Like, it was like music, superheroes, everything was happening. It was great. It was relatively peaceful. And then it wasn't.
Yeah. It's been a little bit different. And I imagine a lot of what you're describing there, which certainly I was experiencing myself in the 80s or whatever, is one of the reasons I'm really into what you do as a comic book writer. I really feel like you emphasize heroism first, like hope first, which hasn't really been really prevalent in comic books. It's been very cynical for a long time. Yeah. And I personally think just in storytelling, not just comic books, but I think in entertainment, I think hope is like the next big evolution that everyone's going to come back to. Yeah. And we're kind of getting there right now.
Yeah. I think the pendulum, like part of it, and I think you'll agree, like growing up in the 80s, there was this very big veneer of hope. Like all my heroes in the 80s, that's what it was. It was Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Van Damme and whatever. And they were very heroic. It was screaming out Lionheart. And it was always like there was kind of a moral north compass. And then in the 90s, everything became a lot more cynical. It was like grunge music. Everything was kind of anti-authoritarian. Even the stuff that I loved, it was like that postmodern movie stuff like Pulp Fiction or whatever. I remember seeing Pulp Fiction. I hated it the first time I saw it. I didn't get it. And it was because everybody was colored with, a shade of gray in a lot of ways. And I didn't respond to it as much. I've grown to respect it. Like I respect it, but I'm definitely more of, I would much rather have these very intentional heroes, the Braveheart type thing where there's a clear cut right and wrong. And that's, obviously through my religious tradition as well. But I remember when I read comics, I loved Captain America. He wasn't struggling with his identity about being an American, or Batman. I loved him because it was like he was a force for good, even when he's kicking everybody's butt. And it wasn't as morally gray. And I always think about, there's a Chesterton quote that Neil Gaiman cribbed a little bit. It's like, we don't read these stories to show kids there are dragons. There are dragons. We teach them that there are knights that can defeat them, and there is something, I think the pendulum swings back and forth all the time when it comes to things. But I always think about the first Superman movie is like the greatest superhero movie to me. And it was because he did have this kind of like, I'm a friend, this moral compass or whatever. But I do see it coming back a little bit. It's that I'm a big fan of Stephen J. Cannell, like those like the A-Team show and Greatest American Hero and all those things. And those are just heroes. They were just heroes. It wasn't. I don't need. I mean, people listen. I get criticized for it all the time as kind of a naive point of view, but I know people, and I've known people throughout my life. The people I respect are not morally gray. They're the people that I really look up to and strive to be. And that's what I think heroes should be. And I think DC Comics in general, that's what set them apart from Marvel a little bit. Marvel was always a little morally gray sometimes. Like Wolverine was like, well, he killed people.
Yeah,
he's the best at what he does, And I loved it. I mean, I loved it, but that was his struggle, right? Is like trying to tame this wild beast of a character.
Same thing with Hulk, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that inner like monster that's waiting to be unleashed.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I think it's interesting what people react to and what people don't react to. And the thing, I don't know, it's hard as a writer because as my name grows in terms of people knowing who I am, it's like when I was writing The Flash, there was a lot of people were really complimentary and nice, and it was great because it was a family-friendly book. It was a book that anybody could go to at any stage, and a kid could read it, older person could read it, and they could have fun. It was definitely moving toward a kind of Incredibles, Fantastic Four vibe, but I was having a lot of fun doing it. But then as like Green Lantern, where it gets a little bigger, Now it's like I can't. It's hard to be online because it's just people hammering me, and it's for weird stuff or just death threats or whatever. And it's a weird catch-22 because I love interacting with people and I love hearing feedback and I love that stuff. But then it's colored by some of this other stuff too, which is hard.
I have the exact same
Yeah.
things going on here at the YouTube. They got a whole comment section, and there will be overwhelmingly, it'll be really strong, supportive, or even contradictory arguments, but it'll be placed out there with real honesty. And some people be, very, very friendly about it. But there is the part of it that is less than friendly.
Yeah.
And I have a good outlook, I think, in life. I think I'm pretty centered, but it's hard not to focus on some of those more negative things. So I try just to kind of avoid them at this point.
Yeah. Same. I try, but I mean, again, like I said, there are things that I love fandom, and because I'm a fan, and it's like I would go out to a comic book store here in LA, and it wasn't the best comic book store, but I'd go there because I knew when I walked in, we could have an argument about who was stronger, the Hulk or the Superman or whatever, versus the other comic store that were very snooty about it. And I was like, I don't want to be snooty. I like talking about it. And when people hammer me for something continuity wise that maybe I didn't catch or an editor didn't catch, I love that, because that's 100%. I'm going to try to address it in some way because I am a bit of a continuity
fix it.
Yeah, I totally want to fix all of it. And so there's a couple things, even in Green Lantern, that's coming up that I'm like, oh gosh, like I should have known that or whatever. That but it's hard. It's hard with especially properties been around for, a billion years. How many company-wide reboots? What's real? What's not continuity? What is continuity? There's some of that interesting stuff. But I love it. I love trying to figure it out. I just wish I had a easier way of just being like, just ignore that. My mom used to say, you chew the hay and spit out the sticks. And that's generally, I try that, but also, just trying the best to tell a story but I'm a nerd. So like,
you want to learn for Superman though, because he's the most hopeful character. And I agree with you that DC was always way more hopeful than Marvel. And I think that's why I've always leaned more towards DC, even, in the movies and stuff. Before I was reading comic books, I was kind of more into Superman and Batman. But you know what I've noticed? I don't know if you're noticing this, but as I've gotten older, when I was younger and certainly when my 20s and stuff, Batman was the heat. Batman was number one.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling that way anymore. I'm feeling like Superman's number one.
To me, how do I put this? It's like, I love Superman. I love him. Like, I wrote a Super Sons movie and it was so fun. It felt like Superman's the dad I want to be,
Exactly.
Batman, when he's done well, is the dad I wish I was, which is when Batman's done as Liam Neeson in Taken, like, like that's like willing to do what it is for the right reason. I'm like, yeah, I'm all in, I'm all in on that Batman. I'm in on the Batman that has gadgets and that does fun, that has a fun, I don't know. It's just when he becomes so dour and so cynical and so emotionless that I don't respond to him as a human being. I'm like, I don't get that person. I don't understand that.
And I don't understand, you're a writer, why does everyone say, Superman is boring or Superman's hard to write? I feel like he's there's so much to learn from the character there. He's very cut and dry. There are firm walls set on Superman. He technically should be easier to write than anybody. You just have to come up with a threat that's actually going to do something to him.
I agree with you. And I also love that the old Golden Age and Silver Age comics of Superman are so wacky and crazy. And I think that's because they were just like, well, I can do anything. The first arc that I had with Flash, where he was like quantum leaping into different Flash bodies, that was originally a Superman pitch. And I because I always thought, oh my gosh, like what would, we all think this is like, what would I do if I was writing Superman? I was like, I would get him over here. And I've had a couple Superman pitches because I love the character. And I think that, but man, I got to tell you, like, I went to a creative summit And Mark Waid's obsessed with Superman. He's got some incredible stuff. Dan Slott has some stuff coming down the pipe that I'm like, you are awesome. Like, it's just the kind of like crazy stuff that I'm really excited about for Superman. I love him. I love Superman. I think there's so many things you can do. That's the reason he sticks around, right?
Oh yeah, there's a reason he's the alpha when it comes to comic book superheroes.
Also, I think when you become a dad, it becomes a little more apparent. Like it is that thing of like, you have a little more responsibility under your belt. You start to realize, oh my gosh, this guy has tons of responsibility and tons of power to hurt or help. And I love that.
Yeah. Just in your everyday life, you do something, you're about to say a word you're not supposed to. You realize the boys are there. And you're like,
yes,
I really can't do it now. I need
There's
to set
nothing
that good
better
example.
too, also of like doing something strong for your kids, and they're just like, "Wow, Dad," you're thinking, well, there's a gratifying nature to it to be that kind of like servant leader.
Oh yeah. My wife, I woke up one evening. My wife's like trying to put this thing that my oldest son had got for Christmas, and it just wasn't coming together. And I went in there, and like 5 minutes later, I had it fully together and handed it to him. I was like, "Yep." I'm the problem solver.
Yeah, it's great. I would love to get my hands on Superman, man. I really would someday.
Well, I'm hoping that it does happen one day, because while I certainly respect, The Dark Knight Returns, you mentioned early, amazing book. I personally like Batman Year One better, but it's phenomenal. I like The Watchmen.
Yeah.
Especially when I read it the second time and I actually understood what he was trying to do. I love Saga the Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
But I am kind of over the cynical take on the heroes. I think we've turned the corner. We got 25 years of it.
I agree. But what's so funny is when I reread Dark Knight Returns, it's so funny. It's weirdly, Frank Miller did this really well. He did it with Daredevil too, because I think Daredevil Born Again is one of my favorite arcs of a comic book. It's like it feels like it's cynical, and it's not. What I think is so fascinating about Dark Knight Returns is like he's still like trying to save the city and trying to save these kids, and he's not out to kill anybody. It's just it's rough the way it's done. And I don't know if you've read Daredevil Born Again, but it's the same thing.
One of my favorite stories of all time. It's amazing. It's the best deconstruction that's ever been executed in comic books, because he comes back better than he was when it started.
It is so clever, but at the same time, you're sitting there going like, there's nothing. It never breaks the character. I think that's what I love about it. It always respects the character for who he is and never breaks him. And I'll talk about Star Wars. I'll get on my high horse, and this will lose me all the fans in the world. But like Luke Skywalker, I was a huge hero of mine. So like that second of the sequel trilogies, that ruined it for me. It ruined it for me.
I'm with
because
you.
I was like, you ruined my hero. Like I've already seen my hero go through the temptation and come out the other side stronger. And now you're telling me, no, but he's tempted again. And I was like, wait, what? And this time he's going to kill his nephew. I was like, I don't understand. We already went through
the guy that literally didn't give up on his evil father that played a part in destroying an entire planet, but through the end knew that there was something redeemable about him, and finally got him redeemed in the end, because he never gave up hope. Finally gave up hope. I'm with you 100%.
And when that happens, I think that's a hard. So when I look at Daredevil, or I look at, I always try to do this with characters I write, is like, why do people like them? What is it that is so critical? And I'm not the guy that's going to try to break it at all. I don't want to do that. I like these characters. I like that they were created for a reason. I like that you can take them through trials and tribulations or whatever, but I don't like breaking them in a way that makes you go, well, they can never come back. They're already tarnished, and that's really hard. I think, and that's the other thing. It's like when I write characters. There's a lot of characters I write that I don't, it's not that I don't like, it's just I don't know enough about them. And I always put in my head, like, okay, Mr. Terrific is one that I always bring up. Is I tried to get Ted Kord for the Flash book. And they said, you can't use Ted Kord, but you can use Mr. Terrific. And I was like, that Vulcan guy? Like, I was like, oh, he's always so emotionless. He's got these fears. I don't know much about him. And then
he's got a good jacket.
Yeah, he's got a cool jacket. But I was like, but how would I write him to make me like him? you know? And I'm not out there bashing on him or anything like that. It's like, I want to go, how can I write him in a way? And it was like, oh, he's Buckaroo Banzai. Once I figured that out, I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. Like, I'm going to make him the Buckaroo Banzai of the DC universe. He's going to have all these businesses. He's going to, you know, like, and it became a lot of fun for me to write him. And now he's one of my favorite characters. So I never feel like there's a character that is not hard to write, as long as you can figure out why you should like them, you know?
Yeah, you got to get that connection. Like, what do they mean to you? And then you can pour all that spirit into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, you know, Josh Williamson had created Kid Flash. And I don't know if he created him because the television series had like made a black Wally or what, you know, and then they brought the regular Wally back in continuity. And I was just like, who is this kid? Like, why should I care? And the minute I realized that Wally was my cousin, the guy that, like, you know, completely tried to get you out of school and cause trouble, and he was much more like me, like more of a square, like trying not to get in trouble, it became so much more fun. I was like, oh, now I like this character. He's trying to be. Did you ever
read the Teen Titans book from, I think it's Adam Glass?
I never did, and I love Adam Glass. So
he wrote a Teen Titans run. I don't remember the exact issue number he starts on, but I think Bernard Chang is the one that illustrates it. And he brings in a whole new cast, and you get Crush in there, which people probably know, but he brings in another character called Roundhouse. And Wallace is the one that recruits Roundhouse because he saw him on YouTube, and he brings him in. And their relationship is like Roundhouse being this like traditional Asian family, bringing Wallace over the first time and telling him all the rules on how to interact with his mother, never ask for seconds, never do this. And it was like one of the most wonderful little relationships that's been created in DC in a long time. And unfortunately, we don't get to see it anymore, but I think you would love it. There was like so much heart in there. You're like, I could totally relate to what's going on here.
I think Adam Glass is awesome. He did that book, indie book that I thought was so cool too, it was almost like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen a little bit, but with cool American heroes, you know. Gosh, I cannot think of it for the life of me. I love that because that's the stuff that I love. I remember, I think it was it Jeff Johns' Teen Titans when Tim stole the Batmobile and like wrecked it. It might have been Peter David's Young Justice, I'm not sure, but like wrecked it. And like Batman's coming out of the thing, like, why is my Batmobile in San Francisco? Like, you know, everybody's just like, be quiet, don't let, you know, those type of moments between characters are they're my favorite things in the world. In the Flash, it would be like, and discovering them as a writer is really fun. Having Irie and oh my gosh, Liberty Bell, like suddenly she has this mentor and they're like wearing jackets. Like I was like, oh, this is the reason that she wears a jacket later on, like Kingdom Come and stuff, is because her hero becomes Liberty Bell. Like she's so cool and I want to be like her, and those kind of relational stuff. It was Nightwing when Chuck Dixon was doing Nightwing and Robin, and those were like kind of like Nightwing would show up as kind of the big brother and Robin would show up. I was like, those are the best moments, those interactions between the characters. I love that.
Yeah, it definitely feels like you are almost like a family first guy in writing it, you know, reading through that Flash book. And there's a lot of layers to that we can talk about here in a bit. But it always felt like family is first and foremost. You get the Green Lantern book. It's putting the family back together. Yeah. I'm assuming that's because you're a dad. I know I've had epiphanies very similar to myself.
100%. I mean, with the Wally one it was so natural because I have this amazing, wonderful wife and I have 2 kids and I have a weird job. So like that became much more natural to write about. I think family, like even relational family or found family, is important to me. But I think it's also just with Wally, let's put it this way, like I tend to any time I write, I tend to singularly focus on a character, like whether it's Hal or Wally. And then I start, depending on who's in their orbit, right? So when it comes to Linda and the kids, that quickly came. And then it was like, okay, well, there's Barry, and now I'm going to wrap these guys up and then try to build to an event. And I did this very similar with Hal. Luckily, because he was quarantined on Earth, it gave me a much more prolonged exposure to Hal and Carol and that kind of relational stuff. And then what's happening with these other characters and bring them in. organically. I feel like if you just throw all the characters in, no one gets a chance to shine. No one gets a moment in the sun. You don't, as a reader, why should I care about this character? Like giving them enough space for you to care about them is interesting. Like it's sort of like, Philip Kennedy Johnson did all this crazy stuff, and I love Philip. And he's like, oh, here's a construct girl. And I'm like, that's weird. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy. Like, you gave her sentience and stuff. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, are they allowed to do that? So that's something like Morgan and I talk about all the time. And we're like, hey, because we're going to take that thread and we're going to do something with it. Kelly, Teen Lantern's another one that I'm like, who is this? And like, even looking at the way Bendis created her.
She's never the Green Lantern. She's more of a hacker.
Right. But even when they created her, it was like, oh, this is weird. This is a weird origin story. And so, people that have been reading me long enough.
Kind of a criminal, to be honest.
Well, this is the fun thing is that people that read me long enough know that I never leave those threads for long, because now I'm curious. Now I'm like, well, what are the odds this 12-year-old girl, can do all this stuff? That seems weird, So then it's like, okay, what's the story behind that? I have blind spots, but it is fun to dig into it and figure out the characters and figure out how they fit and rebuilding that. Because like for Green Lantern in particular, I felt like part of my job was there were a lot of loose ends in the last run. Yes. And so trying to kind of put it back in a way that feels like status quo but different, with a lot more little, like, deepening those things and then taking it in a different direction is interesting. And I'm just not smart enough to keep up with some of the mythology, so I'm like, blow it up, let's let's do this.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. For me, in my experience, doing YouTube, and being a dad being such an important thing, like, this job has been really cool for me because I get all these weird hours to like spend extra time with my kids.
Yeah.
Do you get the same thing, or are you just writing 12 hours a day?
No, 100%. I don't, it would be really hard to go back to do a 9 to 5. When I
couldn't do it.
When I was a producer on a little cartoon show, when I found out my wife was pregnant on a Friday, and that Monday, the entire department got let go. And so for the first 4 years of my kid's life, I was a stay-at-home dad. And because
best job in the world, dude.
It's great. It's great. It's, by the way, you have a different appreciation for anybody that stays at home. But it was great. And here I have this ambition to be a writer, and I was scratching out things, but I would never trade it for anything for what I got to spend with my oldest daughter. And then our second daughter came. And at that time I started getting more and more work at Warner Brothers, but it is, the best thing about it is I can go to all their plays. I can go to all their whatevers. I can be there anytime they need me. They know that they can come in my office and that we can play, and, we can play games. We can watch movies. I can take time off. We can go somewhere. It is thrilling that I have the flexibility to be able to do that. And
it's such a blessing,
because it's such a small amount of time, Mm-hmm. It's like my wife and I just keep going, like, it's disappearing quick. Like, they're going to be off.
I swear 2 weeks ago, I was in the hospital holding my firstborn son, scared out of my mind because my in-laws were like, all right, we're leaving now. And my wife had just had surgery and I'm holding the baby. I was like, you're leaving? Yeah. Then my son cried for the first time. Oh. And I finally got him to stop crying. I remember looking at my wife. I was like, there's the first win.
Yeah.
And it's supposedly been almost 10 years. It's hard to believe.
I had the moment, it crushed me, and they said, you'll never know the last time you can pick up your kid. And I was just like, oh, and we were at an amusement park and I had her on my shoulders and I was like, yeah, I can't do that anymore. Like, it was just crushing to me,
Too much.
Yeah, and with daughters, it's going to be worse because they're going to come bring home some boy, and I'm going to want to like punch him in the face. But it is the most wonderful thing. But back to our original question, like the great thing about Wally to me was he's the most well-adjusted, at least the way I perceived him, was the most well-adjusted superhero in DC Universe. It was like, he has a kid, he has a family, he has a job, he has like, everybody else is still like single, like breaking up.
He became the symbol of hope even over Superman and DC Rebirth. And I think that was by design by Jeff Johns. And I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. Jeff is a smart guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been it's cool. So your kids also into superheroes? Or are they like, oh, my dad's a DC writer, I'm going to get into that? Because my kids, I try to show them Captain America, who they like the design. They love the Spider-Man design. They seem to like Marvel heroes more. Yeah. But when I get them the comic books, they want to read Dogman and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm finding it much more difficult to get them into like the cool stuff that I like.
Yeah, I found I have to be very tricky. They like it, but they do not like it as much as their generation likes. Like you said, Dogman. They were really into Miraculous Ladybug, and I was like, great, that's a gateway drug for superheroes, And I will try to backdoor into things a lot of times. I'm like, look, this girl, she's a superhero.
Very similar here. Yeah. It's almost the same thing.
It is. And I think I had my oldest daughter wrote an issue of Flash with me, and that helped, but I don't think that generation I don't think they care about IP and that stuff as much. They're more apt to just make their own thing. They like it, but it's just hard as a parent because you're also just going like, I need to just respect what they're into and try to foster.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make clones of me, right? But I would like them to like cool stuff.
Totally. And by the way, I totally like the amount of 80s movies I make them watch and stuff, and like, I'm just completely brainwashing them.
We just watched Princess Bride and Goonies within the last few weeks, and they love both of them. I was like, they're great movies. It is amazing how like there are things in a lot of those movies that I'm like, PG-13 don't mean today what it meant back in the 80s and 90s.
I was laughing because like every boys adventure movie, which I loved, Monster Squad, Explorers, whatever, immediately they're showing a boy peeping on a girl, and you're like, that was just like, that wasn't a movie, like that was just fine. I was like, what? That's fine. It is fun to show them things, and my daughters now know, they're like, well, is this appropriate for when you grew up? Like that, they're always like, they know that, well, maybe, I remember it being fine, is exactly. Kind of what but it's fun. Yeah, I try to brainwash them. They are well versed in superheroes. Like they know a lot about a lot. But I don't know if it's there. I did get my daughter, my oldest, to read Batgirl Year One, which is great. Chuck Dixon, Scott Beatty, I think. And she was like, oh, that's really good. And I'm like, oh, is it? And then immediately going back buying a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, oh. And then I bought my youngest a Groot and a little book. I have to start a little younger with her. But yeah, it's
I prefer the Tiny Titans Treehouse of Horrors or whatever that book is. That book is great.
That's great. I'm glad they're doing Teen Titans Go books too, because Teen Titans Go obviously blew up for a certain generation.
My 5-year-old loves Teen Titans Go. He thinks Beast Boy is the man, and I don't want to break it to him. It's like, dude, when you finally get to the real DC books, Beast Boy is not it.
Oh,
kind of a dork.
It's like, that's what's cool about Teen Titans and then Teen Titans Go for me. It was like, I was never a Cyborg guy. And then it was like, booyah. I was like, oh, I like this character now. It's sort of like Aquaman in Batman Brave and Bold. I remember seeing the trailer for Batman Brave and Bold and being like, funny Batman. And then I watched it and I'm like, oh, this is hysterical. I love this show. And then Aquaman is like, outrageous. Let me tell you about a story. I was like, oh, I love this version of Aquaman. That's hilarious.
Did you get to see the Minecraft movie with your girls yet?
Oh yeah, I took my nephews and my daughters, and they howled. They loved it. I found myself
My
chuckling
boys went nuts.
nuts. Yeah, I chuckled.
My oldest kept grabbing me like the way I will like grab him during Star Wars. Like, do you know who that is? And I'll like tell him who the character is because he doesn't know. He's like, that's the whatever stone, and they're gonna do this. So like, what the hell are you talking about? It just seemed like this really weird Jack Black, so far over the top you can't even see where he begins and this farcical performance ends.
But you know what? They went completely bananas. And I said, well, there's an end credit sequence. We have to stay after the credits. Lost their mind. They lost their minds. And I mean, good for Jack Black. He's figured out how to be in the two like biggest and like video game related movies ever. Super Mario Brothers and this one. And my daughters were immediately singing the Lava Chicken song or whatever. And I was just like,
it was quite catchy, actually.
Yeah.
That was one of the best parts of the movie.
I enjoyed them enjoying it. And there were moments I laughed. There was moments when, Jason Momoa and Jack Black together, I was like, this is ludicrous.
It feels like, I don't want to oversell, but almost like a cultural moment for like that generation. I think it's great. Seeing the videos where a dude's like on someone's shoulders with a real chicken during like the chicken wrestling match. Maybe they went too far, but I'm just glad they're having fun because it makes me remember when Batman 89 came out. Yeah. And I was at like the school lunch table and all my little nerdy friends, we all had our tops like Batman, the movie based like cards, and we were trading them to try to get complete sets. And we got to get the Pelfrey Tower or whatever it is. Dude, it was amazing.
I had Batman 89 was such you'll see over here, there's all these buttons and I had every button on my stupid jacket. I was the first in line at my movie theater because they didn't have assigned seating. And I call it my Batman 89 syndrome because I had a thirst buster waiting in line, going to the movie theater with my brother. Halfway through the movie, I have to pee so bad, I'm going to die. And I back up slowly and I run to the bathroom. I probably was gone 30 seconds. And I came back. And of course, my older brother was like, "Oh, you missed it! I can't believe you missed it." Yeah, and I was like, but I came back to saying, but I had all, I still have like all the graphic novels, the Batman movie official movie book. I stuffed a ballot box to get a stand up of Michael Keaton. Like I was so deep into Batman,
like all the McDonald's cups and stuff. Like that became a collectible. It was like a cup for Coke.
So it's really fun to see the kids have something like that. I miss moments like that. I seeing Lord of the Rings. I saw The Matrix in college. It was a sneak preview. No one knew what it was. I walked in and my brain started melting because I'm like, what's happening? This is the stuff I like. I don't understand. Like I was totally perplexed, and even when you watch,
I didn't even want to see The Matrix. And the only reason I did, because I came home on leave, I was in the military. I think I was stationed in England at the time. I come home on leave, and my favorite memory ever with my father is after my parents got divorced, he didn't really have any money. He got all stuck with all the debt. So he had to move in with his parents. We just couldn't do much except go there and hang out. Yeah. And finally, one day he goes, "You boys want to see a movie with Andre the Giant?" Talking about The Princess Bride. And he takes us to the Dollar Theater. Yeah. And we go see it. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Ever. Yeah. And I go back home on leave. He's like, "You want to go see The Matrix? It's at the Dollar Theater." I was like, "Yeah, I'll go see The Matrix with you at the Dollar Theater." Yeah. This is one of my favorite memories ever. Yeah. I didn't want to see the movie. I go see it. It's one of my 5 favorite movies of all time still.
Yeah. It's a perfect movie. I mean, there are a few perfect movies in the world just to do The Princess Bride. But that one's perfect. And you could see at the end of it, it's like, this movie's done. And I could feel the cynical ploy of, well, actually, it's a trilogy. Like, it's like, I need that money. Da, 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 I
remember watching the Oscars where they were like, if you think this one's great, you're going to be blown away by the sequels. I'm like,
no. Yeah, no, that first movie's perfect. It's like watching Back to the Future. I think Back to the Future is pretty much perfect. Even though the pervy stuff is weird, showing my kids, like showing them at a right time where they don't catch, again,
I watched Back to the Future with the boys within the last 6 months. They loved all 3 of them. They couldn't get enough. But there are some moments.
Yeah. The second one, especially, I was super surprised. I was like, ooh.
I remember that.
I just remember the hoverboard. That's all I remember. I just remember hoverboard, and that's it. But it is fun to see them have a moment, and I miss those moments. It felt like, I remember going to see Batman Begins as midnight movie at Man's Chinese, and they had the tumbler out front, had no idea what it was, but I remember there was a moment where the tumblers, running across the rooftops, and I'm looking at my friends, and we're like, this is the coolest effing thing I've ever seen. We were so pumped about it. And it was just, that's when movies are great. I saw another double feature there, the Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, Planet Terror and Death Proof. And actually they should have switched those in the order, I felt, because Death Proof was a little slower, but Planet Terror, was that what it was called? The crowd went absolutely ape the entire time. Like it was bedlam, and having that corporate experience with people that you're just seeing something that you respond to is just the best feeling in the world. It just sucks because movies here cost so much to go see. I got a half an hour of previews. I got jackholes, on their phones or iPads talking loudly.
And you get real commercials now, which I really dislike.
It's the worst. It's the worst. So, and I've got a big TV screen that I don't have to deal with that stuff. So
here in the Philippines, they tell you when the previews start, and there's a time that tells you when the movie starts.
Oh, that's great.
I think is brilliant, especially if you have assigned seating.
Yeah. And there's a couple. So in LA, one of the great things they have in LA are these great movie houses that play older movies, like Tarantino's movie theater, the New Bev. They are hardcore. If they see a phone or a watch, you're out. You're gone. If you talk, you're gone.
They shouldn't play that Minecraft movie. Apparently, there's a lot of phones going on.
No, I mean, you can laugh and yeah, exactly. But like seeing all these old movies again with people that want to see movies is a really great. I feel like such an old man, but yeah.
I used to go to the Alamo Roadhouse, or the Alamo Draft House in San Antonio. That's where I'd go, and they'd have they'd play goodies and all that kind of stuff. There'd always be like a special menu item. Yeah, like, I'll take the chunky
the chunk. Yeah. So funny, dude. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I don't really get to do that here in the Philippines, unfortunately, but I'll definitely be doing that when I come back for a little vacation. I'll grab my oldest and make him go see some crazy movie.
Totally.
Some cool theater. So obviously, when I discovered you, it was on The Flash. Okay. And I remember, because I have to look through all the solicitations and cover everything here for the channel. I remember going, who the hell is Jeremy Adams? Like, I've never even heard of this guy. It's like, oh, whatever. The Flash book was really going nowhere fast. The destruction that had happened to Wally at the hands of Heroes in Crisis, whether they meant to do that or not, like a lot of, he was almost a toxic character.
Yeah.
So I decided to check out the one issue. I was like, this is actually pretty good. And I'm like, wait, this is going somewhere. And you were actually able to essentially redeem or rehab the character Wally in like 18 months. I couldn't believe you accomplished it.
I am such a nerd. Like, I cannot tell you that, like, they gave me the book and really just handed it to me. And I really did think at first, very early on, I thought, they told me that you wouldn't be on the book more than 12 issues. Like the odds that you get more than 12 issues is almost nowhere. And in my heart, I was like, I want to get to 800. And I bet I can get Mark Waid and Jeff. Like, I was already planning, and I remember having lunch with Jeff Johns and Tim Sheridan. And I said, like, I want to get to 800. I go, Jeff, if I get to 800, would you write a piece of it? And he's like, yeah, I will. But like, that probably won't happen. And I'm thinking it'll happen, and even when I took over Wally, I knew the elephant in the room was Heroes in Crisis. Like that was the biggest problem to me. Because I was like, well, how do you write a character that's a killer? And I was like, I don't want to write a character that's a killer. And so obviously second logical conversation was, well, he didn't do it, obviously,
How do we rewind that story? And
then I was
change
like,
a few things.
How do I get to? And I knew very early on what I was doing, and I was dropping those breadcrumbs, but I knew they wouldn't let me do it. I knew enough to know they wouldn't let me do it. I very quickly, as we're getting closer to it, I said, well, I want to do this. And they were like, no. And I said, okay. But I knew I had been working for Warner Brothers and Warner Brothers Animation, and they had just got bought by AT&T. Everything was tumultuous. And sometimes your best bet is just to wait everybody out. And so I've done it a couple of times where I was like, I'm just going to go, and I have faith that the person above me will be fired and I will be able to slip in and do what I want to do. And that's kind of what happened. I was able to retcon it. I wasn't able to do it as fully. I got the buy off that I could have a conversation between Wally and Roy, and that it could be this Savitar surge, or, you know, the Speed Force trying to get rid of Savitar or whatever. And it was weird because Savitar got pulled away, and that was supposed to be for an event. I was playing into an event, but they totally changed what the event was. So it was very strange. So now I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I got to fix that. I know what that story is later on. But I didn't fully get to do it because I wanted to bring back all those characters too. I was like, well, it's not, to me, a hero saves the day. You know, and I wanted him to save everybody. That was the main thrust. Originally, he was going to jump into Barry's body, and he was going to know, and he was going to take Barry's body and use it to save everybody. And they were like, hell no. And I was like, boo. so then, you know, I had that character Gold Beetle, and I wish I had an extra issue for the end of 1 Minute War, because what you didn't see was, I wanted to do this whole scene because in Heroes in Crisis, Booster Gold and Blue Beetles, like, they got a clone of Wally's body and run out. And I wanted Gold Beetle to sneak right back in and makes clones. And I wanted to have a scene of her just shoveling these clone bodies off the gold bug into the ground as she saves everybody. And it was just very stupid. But I love it. Yeah. That was
might have been the worst thing about Heroes in Crisis. Even like him freaking out, becoming overwhelmed with emotion and killing everybody. Yeah. Was when he went to the future and grabbed his own body and brought it back to like fake his own like death, so they wouldn't think it was like,
it became
kind of
worse,
just
right?
killed yourself.
Yeah, and it was, you know, I think trying to couch it in philosophical terms, like the great thing about it, the accidents, the things that I really love are, I couldn't do that. So, you could have him have a conversation with somebody, and Roy happened to be there, and Roy was in recovery. So Roy has all this great knowledge about, you know, AA and Al-Anon and different things that I know about, and saying like, you can't leave before the miracle happens, and like setting that groundwork for redemption and who he is and stuff. It was a lot of fun, and no one knew who I was. I had a career in animation and stuff, but I remember the first podcast I went on was Lost in Comics. Love those guys. And I was very much like, hey, just to let you know, as long as I'm writing Wally, he's going to be okay. You know, like that was like the first thing I said, like, no, he's going to be okay. Because no one believed me. No one believed that.
For good reason, because Scott Lobdell and Brett Booth had done that Fast Forward series, which is really good, and was definitely trying to redeem the character. Yeah, and it kind of got there, and then even Josh Williamson, before his Flash run is over, goes back there and introduces Yellow Flash in there, kind of corrupted him, kind of does it. But then you get to Dark Knight's Death Metal, and all of a sudden he kind of goes bad again, or he's I think he's actually just removed from the chair. And it's like every time he's almost there, they would kind of pull back. So you didn't believe that they were ever going to let him fully be redeemed.
Yeah. And in Future State, my good friend wrote a little bit, Brandon Vietti, and he wrote one where famine took him over and he was evil. And I was like,
Barry is a half second out of time watching him murder everybody.
Yeah. And I'm like, I can't do it. I got to fix it. Like, I got to fix it, you know?
It was like, he's already a killer. You can't make him a serial killer again.
You should hear my calls when I tell them they gotta DH John Kent. The absolute crickets I get is hilarious. And in my head, I'm going, I'm going to do it. I don't care.
It's like, the easiest thing in the world to do.
100%.
He's still on Earth 3, and Earth 3 just sent it like their version of John Kent over to try and infiltrate the Justice League.
It's a crazy thing to me. I guess they don't like money because Super Sons is like a cash cow. It's a great franchise. It's a wonderful.
One of the few books I gave my 9 and 5-year-olds that they read all the way through. Yeah, I love Super Sons.
My producer, Rick, his name's Rick Morales. We were doing Mortal Kombat, and he's like, "We got to do this next." And it was Super Sons, and he handed me the Tomasi book, and I was like, "This is this is freaking great. And we just kept asking, and they kept saying no. They kept saying theatrical is going to do it. Theatrical is going to do it. And there was just that moment where AT&T bought Warner Brothers, and we said, he was at a meeting and he said, listen, I don't want to do this. Jeremy and I have been wanting to do this. And they said, well, yeah, you can do it. And we had like this small window where
write it immediately.
Yeah. Oh, I had the outline in within 2 days, because we had been talking about it for years. And I had the script written within like a week or two, like ridiculously fast. And he had it. And it was within a month, somebody called and said, hey, we want to see the script and we want to see the animatics. And we're like, uh-oh. This is where we get shut down. But they didn't, and it was great, and it was really well received. But yeah, I love those characters. I brought them back from a different dimension in Flash, because I was like, well, okay, if they're going to be there, then I'm just going to bring them back from another dimension.
And I really love that Flash run. I just remember getting to 1 Minute War, like, oh, there's some really cool stuff going in here. Yeah. You see all the sales are climbing, and then you're off the book.
Yeah,
and nothing's announced. I was like, are they like, this is probably the best new writer they've gotten in like 4 or 5 years. It felt like they weren't going to do anything with you.
I got a call just a few days before Christmas, and they said that they were taking me off Flash. And I was, to be fair, I was probably way too emotionally invested in that book, and the first thing I said was like, are the kids going to be okay? And it was like, that was literally my first thing. Cause and people know by now, like Travis Mercer and I were trying to do a Young Justice. Like I was trying to build up a superhero team with kids, because I think that that's a weird market that they don't exploit. That I'm like, dude, have a superhero in continuity superhero team that's like New Mutants or New Warriors or, Teen Titans or Young Justice. Like that's what that was back in the day. And nobody seems to be biting on it. But, I was bringing in all these characters to do that. And they said, they literally said, my sales are fine. They said, but they want a new tonal direction. So in that call, and then they said, this is before 1 Minute War even came out.
Yeah, and the sales really started climbing.
Oh, yeah. The first 3 issues sold out, and I didn't even know. They didn't tell me until the 3rd issue.
Yeah.
And I got a call, and they were like, oh, man, it's weird. You sold out the first 3. I'm like, weird? You should have told me, But it was on that call, they said, we want to give you Green Lantern. And I was just like, oh, no. I don't know if I want to do it. And I was really kind of down about it. I was like, oh, no, I don't know. And I was
because it was supposed to be a Mariko Tamaki book. They'd even announced it.
Yeah, and it's funny because even when they said to me, we want to give you that book, like even a couple months later, they had announced that it was like they announced Mariko Tamaki, and I was like, wait, what? And they were like, oh, that was a mistake. And so I was like, I was in the dark.
They screwed up the press release.
Yeah. But what was funny was, and to be fair, I mean, what's hard is I do think that DC stabilized a great deal. What people don't know is they had slashed everybody. There was very few people working there. And it was a mess. Everybody's just trying to like hold on for dear life.
They've done 3 rounds of basically editorial firings and layoffs. Yeah. But at the same time, they basically removed every creator that was exclusive.
Yeah.
At the same time. And yes, it was very much a bare bones operation at the time.
It was bare bones. So we're all trying to, the funny thing with Green Lantern was they said, hey, Paul was like, my editor was like, hey, I'd really love to do this Green Lantern with you. And I was like, okay, I don't know. Let me think about it. And I was driving to my in-laws. Like I needed to think about it. You know what I mean? Like I'm an idiot, but I was hurt feelings. And I called Jeff Johns.
Play hard to get.
Yeah. I called Jeff Johns and I was like, oh, they took me off the Flash book. And he's like, what? Like, I don't, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, they want me to do it. They want to, and I go, but they want me to do Green Lantern. And he just, oh, this is awesome. Like he was like so thrilled and he was so pumped. He's like, you're going to kill it. He was like super cheerleading, modeling me. And he really was cheerleading me. And by the time I got to my in-laws, I had figured out what I wanted to do. I knew what the story was. And I called him back. I was like, yeah, let's do it. The hardest thing was just trying to keep Hal on Earth. That was the hardest part of it. It's weird to me because I was like, oh, he's just going to be on Earth the entire time. And then it's just like, there's this weird gravitational pull towards space. And then it was just super fun to start putting in weird, wild. I mean, I'm referencing Millennium, like there were things that, and I've always meant to go back to Tom Kalamaku. I tried to get Floronic Man too, because I was like, well, he's one of the last new Guardians as well. And they were like, you can't use him. I'm like, what are you talking about? I already wrote the script. Floronic Man, they're like, no.
He's in Poison Ivy right now.
Yeah. So I didn't know that. I was all buck, I am a nice guy, but there are things that just get me absolutely crazy. It's like if somebody says I can do something and then I suddenly can't do it, I'm a jerk. I'm an absolute jerk. You have to kick and scream a little bit sometimes.
You got to have your things, your buttons.
Yeah. But Green Lantern, the animated series, was my first credit on television. So getting to do Green Lantern and getting to do Hal Jordan, the way that I kind of perceived him and trying to find out his voice, and then building that up over time, and his chasing after Carol, and then what's happening in space and the United Planets and all that stuff. And part of the joy I have in writing comics, especially in DC Comics, is I notoriously dip into other people's comics and find out what's going on. And PKJ was doing his Superman, and there was the United Planets. I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, can I use this? Oh yeah, sure. And just tying that together. And then he was doing John Stewart and us talking all the time, like, oh, how can we integrate these books? And it was, I love doing that stuff. And then Zermanico, Zermanico is just an unbelievable artist. Like, he's so good. I mean, I remember Tim Sheridan calling me, really, he was annoyed because we had done Batman Beyond, or Flashpoint Beyond. Yeah. And we work with Zermanico, and every time we get pages, we're like, gosh, this guy's unreal. Like, he's so good. And so when I got Green Lantern, he was like, how dare I wanted him, and I was like, sorry, man. And so Alejandro, he's just so good. He's just so good. And then the minute Hal went to space, I remember the first page he sent me, and I was like, I'm such an idiot. I should never have had him. It was so good. It was like epic, and the way that he draws. And Jeff was actually the one who told me when we started, he's like, make sure you give him enough panel space, because he's really good at like making these cinematic things. And I really tried hard not to overcrowd the page with words or panels. And I call him, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want a mech battle. I'm like, mech battle. Like, let's do it. Whatever you want. I'm like 100%, whatever you want, man. Let's do it.
So you like the DC cleanup guy? You took Wally and where he was, which was a fractured state, and you kind of rebuilt him. You take the Green Lantern, what Jeff Thorne had done, he essentially broken everything. The central power battery's gone. There's no Green Lantern Corps. United Planets are taking over. You kind of built that up. Then you're on Aquaman now, and we hadn't had an Aquaman book, I think, in 3 years. Yeah. The last I heard, he was retiring to be a stay-at-home dad. So what's his can't remember his name. The other Aquaman could be the Aquaman.
Well, yeah, Jackson Hyde.
Yes.
Which, by the way, I kept, because I had worked on Young Justice, I kept writing him as Calderon, and I was like, wait, oh, it's not the same character? Oh, okay. Sure, it's not. Wink, wink. Yeah. I don't know. If that is what they believe, I am 100% here for it. You know what I mean? If they think that I'm the guy to come in and like bring it back in some way, I don't know. And that's not to be disparaging to anybody else, because I think everybody was doing their own thing. I just know what I like. And I don't
think Jeff Thorne was planning on leaving Green Lantern in that state. They canceled the series. That's where he was. He was going to rebuild it too. Yeah. They just didn't give him the chance.
I think that's true. And in some ways it's like, it benefited me, right? Because he set up all these toys with the Source Lantern. Like, the minute I saw the Source Lantern, I was like, Kyle's going in there. Like, that was like the first thing. I was like, oh my gosh.
Got to see the White Lantern.
It's going to be Incubator. And that whole White Lantern thing with Kyle is going to be a bigger part of like Kyle's story going forward too, which will be really fun. And, but I knew so many pieces of it. So many pieces of that run left all these dangling threads that I was just like, oh crap, this is for a writer. This is great. Because you basically get to pick up a television series after the summer break. You remember when they do that for like a TV series? It would be like 3 months, and it'd be like that first episode back, and you're like, what's going on? Where are we? That was really fun. I love it. I mean, Aquaman is definitely. I don't know why it's much more intimidating to me. It was much more of an intimidating. Like assignment in a way. Like I'm the idiot.
Had you had no Aquaman on your writing credits for screenplays and stuff?
I mean, I've written him in a Lego Aquaman, which is like it's very silly and he's kind of fun. But I think Aquaman, I think he's a hard character to write. I think
everyone thinks he's a dork.
Right. I mean, that's always been that. But Jason Momoa kind of took the stink off him a bit, but it was for me, once I wrote the second page, which was like, this is the story of Aquaman, the God Killer. I was like, yeah, now I have to know it. This is Conan the Barbarian underwater. Like I'm gonna make this.
It's like the most like visceral version of Aquaman I've ever seen. Like he's never this intimidating. He's never really this like kind of almost violent. And I like Aquaman. Jeff Johns had a phenomenal Aquaman run. I think they're in the New 52. I love the Dan Abnett Aquaman run. Yeah. But this is a different flavor of Aquaman where like he's just more aggressive. Yeah. And that's but because his family's in danger. Right. And but I also feel like he's this guy, like how many of these characters that we don't spend much time in their youth, we don't know really who they are. They were written in the Silver Age or Golden Age, but Silver Age generally, and they were kind of ciphers. So like getting to know this guy as a king and a husband and a superhero and all these things, and him manifesting like new powers, but like I'm gonna effing get my family back, but also, this obviously we're on this road to the showdown with this weird god thing is going to be pretty epic. So I'm super good. And John Timms has been killing. Rex Locus on the colors has been unbelievable. And I'm just having a lot of fun doing Aquaman now. And by the end of this first arc, he's going to be incredibly intimidating. I think he's going to be, a force of nature in a way. I can't believe you shared that video of what you sent John Timms for the. Is that so funny? Sword. I'm such a nerd. Pretty nerdy stuff, man. It was so funny because this is my 80s shining through. Like I grew up with Beastmaster and Krull and Sword and the Sword and the Sorcerer and like all those things, and they always had crazy weapons. And he didn't have his trident with him when Atlantis disappeared, so it was like, well, the Lady of the Lake is right here, and so when I was saying like, oh, he could do another trident, I was like, honestly, this is honestly what happened. It was like they can make another trident. I go, John already drew him with a sword. So I was like, so I was like, okay, let's do this. And I got so stupid about it. And then John sent me back like, oh, like this? And he had like the blades just pop up at the top. I go, no. And I ran to Home Depot and I like bought all of it. I was like, okay, Mackenzie, just videotape me. Like, it's like this, and then he's like, I got it, and it was just so stupid. But like, that's the stuff that you have fun with, right? Is like you're having fun. I remember seeing it. I was like, so it's a sword and it's got like the hilt that's the trident, and then in another part he's holding it and it's a regular trident. I was like, whoa is this sword turning into a trident? I was like, yeah, that's kind of neat. And then I saw your video. I was like, oh my goodness, he made it kind of dorky, but it's still great. I like the sword that pops up because I always thought about the double-handed, like giant broadswords, and I was like, oh man, he just slides it up. So stupid. But I definitely have fun. It is what it is. It's going to be one of those moments. It's great. It's great addition. Remember when he had the sword? Because I am wide. I am very. I realize that someday I'll move off that book. Somebody will come in and go, that was so stupid. Get rid of that. Go back to bring back the hook hand. Yeah. Hook hand or the 80s, like blue leotard, You've also been doing Flash Gordon. I think that's on Mad Cave, right? Yeah. And despite being exclusive to DC, you're able to keep doing the Flash Gordon book? Yeah, for a little bit. I'm going to wrap up where I'm going to be for that, but that's still a ways off because I had promised them, and I've been having fun with Will Conrad. I think what's fun about Flash Gordon is I really like pulp sci-fi. I really like it doesn't have the heaviness of continuity, so it is very much a serialized action adventure, and that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and Will's done a great job. And then we have Tom Derenick taking over a couple issues, and he's doing a slam bang job too. So it's fun. It's really fun. And
I'm fairly new to comics, so there's a lot of me just going like, I'm still learning,
Mhm.
I know it sounds weird, but it's like I really am learning, and I want to get better at it, and I want to make bigger swings and take bigger swings. And some of that comes from the trust of the people that I work with to say, oh, he can handle X, Y, or Z. I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think that they trust me necessarily in certain things, but I try to. I mean, I bring my own fanboy sensibility. Like when we do crossover events, I'm very much like, I'm trying to make this book a book that you can read if you read the book, but also maybe get you interested in the crossover event or whatever that is. And I try to make the point to make them so that you'll like it no matter what. Because I hated as a kid, it would be like interrupt my story in a way that wasn't holistic. Oh, it drove me crazy.
Oh yeah, you're the one that got Night Terrors right.
Oh,
A lot of
but
people were mad about Night Terrors, but that Hal George story was pretty darn good.
I
Oh,
think
you
it was
mean
good.
he has no fear?
So I was talking to Jeff because they told me it was like a very random, like, hey, sorry to do this to you, but by issue 2, we're gonna have this crossover. I was like, wait, what? And they said, like, you can either write it or somebody else will write it. I go, well, I'm not letting anybody else write it. And the broad strokes was like, yeah, I'm still not clear, but it was like, okay, this thing like takes your fear and manifests it. And I go, in my head, I'm like, okay, Hal doesn't have fear. And in my head, I thought, I wonder if I can get away with doing an issue where it's just this thing trying to find the fear, and we'll leave it with the parallax. And I remember some people were super critical, like, ugh, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, well, because I pull the rug out in the second issue when he goes, you landed on the wrong planet, the wrong guy. And it was 22 pages of just Hal Jordan chasing this thing down and kicking its butt the entire time. Like, it was so funny to me. I felt like I got away with something there. When I feel like I get away with
I
something,
think you got it right.
I do too, but I also felt like I got away with something. Like, no one said, wait, you can't just have him just
turn it around.
And I was like, well, I mean, to be fair, where's his fear?
Yeah, a lot of great artists. You mentioned Will Conrad. I remember the first time I ever remember seeing Will Conrad's art was on an issue of Hawkman.
Yeah,
Robert Venditti. I think it's issue 13. It's like a one shot. I was like, man, this guy is fantastic. And I don't remember seeing him again, but I didn't even know I liked Flash Gordon. I remember the movie with the weird Queen soundtrack, and it's really goofy, and it's very 80s, late 70s, like kind of thing. I was like, oh, apparently I do like Flash Gordon. This is pretty cool.
Have you ever read the John Carter of Mars series?
I've read 2 of the books. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm a big Edgar Rice Burroughs guy. Like, I love Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I never thought that Flash Gordon kind of raised to that level of adventure or whatever. I liked it. I knew the movie. I love Buck Rogers, especially the TV series. So I understood the assignment. I love pulp sci-fi. I love 50s, 40s, 30s, like that kind of level of sci-fi where it was just science was very loosey-goosey. But again, I didn't try. I think sometimes, and this is just my opinion, is sometimes I feel like people just try to reboot things. I don't think you need to reboot things. I think you can just go after those things. Like, my Flash Gordon is not a reboot. It's a sequel series. Everything, I don't want to reboot it. There's no point. There's a reason it's lasted this long in the cultural zeitgeist, and whatever that is, why would I go back and dissuade you from it? I'm like, I love that stuff. His origin story, the thing that I look for a hole is like, well, how was he raised? What's going on? Oh, it'd be fun to put him and Ming together. Like, what if we do a little Escape from New York here? Like, what if we make him just a square-jawed hero that actually does cool things, but turn it on its head a little bit? And it's been fun. And Will and I had worked together on Flash. He had done one of my favorite issues where, oh my gosh, the guy with fire. Oh my goodness, this is where I get destroyed on
Firestorm.
No, the bad guy. But he had cancer because evidently his suit was made out of fiberglass or something crazy, and he drew the heck out of it. Like, it was just this great, beautiful story of this guy like burning these things down because he's dying, and Wally reaching out a hand of like, hey, I'll help you get help, you know. And Will did that, and he's great. He's really, really great. I love that guy. But yeah, I've worked with some awesome artists. The minute Kevin McGuire, I was like, I'm done. The minute Kevin McGuire did anything, I was like, you can fire me. It doesn't matter. I won.
I did want to bring up one final artist. Friend of mine, V. Marion. He used to do some of the fill-in on Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps. He was an amazing Green Lantern artist. And I know he got to come back and do the one special. I think he's coming back for something else.
Oh, he's coming back all the time now. He's to me, I'm like, can we do more? Can we do more? I love that guy. He has in issue 4 and 5, I think. He does those, and he has some of these characters that he's a very dynamic. He kind of reminds me of Todd Knock in a way, but there's like kind of a manga vibe to him that like,
yes,
he can do expressions and he can do the acting and the fun. And he does this. There's this runner that we wrote with Guy Gardner, where Guy Gardner has a spot and just kills it. He's one of those guys that I'm like, and I came across him personally because of that Kickstarter he was doing. And I was like, this looks freaking awesome. And then I met him, and I think
like the nicest guy in the world.
Nicest guy. And I love. By the way, most of these artists I've met are just incredibly nice. I actually am surprised at how many people in comics I thought were going to be jerks, and they haven't turned out to be jerks. They've been really, really kind. Like Pete Tomasi's like the nicest guy. Everybody's been really, really kind. To be fair, I'm a slobbering puppy, you know. I'm constantly just like, hey, remember when you did that and how you did this and you should do this? And I mean, I basically browbeat Kevin McGuire into doing the Lobo Guy Gardner backup series, because I was like, you should. What if we did this and you do this? Would you do this? Well, what if, you know? Like, I'm just constantly trying to convince people to come into my madness, you know. But really, really cool. And Kevin, he loves movies and I love movies, and I would start seeing him at comic conventions. Has just been a way for me to try to work with people, honestly.
Yeah, just get a little networking in there. And
yeah, but I love Ken. He's one of those guys. I don't think we knew him when, you know what I mean? Like, there's a couple.
The thing I love about him, about his style, because he does a lot of really cool stuff. But anytime the superhero is doing something heroic or super, is when they look the best.
Yeah.
Every time they're doing something, they just look magnificent. They always have a cool pose. Their face looks great. And you're like, that's what I like. I want the character moments, but when they're doing something, they need to look just really cool.
Yeah.
And they always
do. No, he's great. He's so good. Wait till you see that. There's this one splash page. I'm like, man. I mean, isn't that the same thing with movies too? Like, there's a difference between watching a Spielberg movie where he's framing it and he's doing it in a way where he'll do one tracking shot that will have all these different movements and things are happening in the frame and it looks neat and it looks cool, versus the camera's just sitting there and people are talking and you're like, I don't care. You know, I want him to look good, you know?
That's what Superheroics is all about. And I'm glad you're bringing this stuff back, man. It's been a really breath of fresh air, and it feels like DC has got like getting all this momentum, not squarely obviously on your shoulders, but I think you're a big part of it. I think the Absolute Universe might be doing a lot of the heavy lifting too.
Now it is. Holy moly, that stuff is selling like hotcakes. I'm like, I got Absolute.
Although I do think your Aquaman could be Absolute Aquaman.
I mean, that is a theory going around for sure. It's definitely a theory. That's all I can say about that.
It definitely feels like it could have been part of that universe, but it's awesome that you're going to be a part of that, because I'm more of a DC guy, and I'm very happy that DC is starting to close the ground with Marvel, who I love Marvel characters, but they're not doing anything nearly exciting as DC these days, in my opinion.
Marvel characters too. I have Marvel Unlimited, and it's really hard to figure out. It's all inaccessible to me. If I open your book and there's a Wikipedia page entry, I don't really want to read it. That's kind of, and also like, I love all the characters, but I don't know. It seems like they go to number one a lot. And like, I don't know exactly where to start, which characters are which. Wait, who's Iron Man? Who's not? Okay. That's hard.
Technically, I think this is the second clone of Iron Man that we're on. It's not even the real Tony anymore, or hasn't been for a long time. We're on a clone of a clone, I think.
I had an X pitch. I tried to tell.
So you're an X-Men fan?
I grew up. My brother, he traded me. We had a shared. You know, when you're a little kid, we had a shared collection. Not very many, but it was like there were some good books in there. I didn't know. My brother's older than me, but we did also have like 5 issues or like 10 issues of Spider-Ham when it first came out.
Beautiful.
And my brother was like, well, listen, Jeremy, you could have a complete collection of Spider-Ham, or you could have like issue 100 of X-Men and like an 87. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And he convinced me to abdicate my rights for the X-Men for the Spider-Ham. And years later, I was like, you dirty, dirty dog, man. That's jacked up. Yeah, he did. He totally did. But yeah, I was a big X-Men guy. I was, I had a lot of Marvel stuff. It was weird because it's like I had a lot of Marvel stuff. It was big Marvel stuff when it came. Captain America, Peter David's Hulk was big for me. New Warriors. I loved anything Ditko. My dad had given me a Doctor Strange little pocket book, but I don't know what it is about Ditko in general. But like Speedball and Blue Beetle, Ted Core Blue Beetle was.
You're massive. The Speedball fan, huh?
I know. And then they did kind of the Heroes in Crisis to him too. They like had him kill all these people, and I was just like, what? And then they made him like an S&M. Like I was like, what is happening? What is happening? You know. But then in you know, it was weird because it was like for a time, and then I remember getting in the Bat books, like I said, Nightwing and Robin and Batman and Dixon was, I think, running the Bat office, and so there was like Birds of Prey, and then when Gail Simone took over Birds of Prey, and I love all the martial arts stuff, so I'm a big martial art nerd, so I love the DC martial art universe. But Justice League International was big for me too. But anyways, yeah, I love so much of Marvel. But then I was you're the generation too that like the Image thing happened, like the Image revolution happened, and it was so massive. People will never know how massive it was. But seeing Spawn and Savage Dragon and Youngblood, whatever, like Cyberforce, I was all in. Wildcats, Divine Right. I was like, I told Jim Lee the other day, I was like, I was a big fan of Divine Right. I really wish they would have been angels still. And he was just like, I think they tolerate me. Like that's what I think. Yeah, it's like, did he sign the exclusive? Darn it. Yeah.
So before we sign off, I think you were talking about Firefly earlier.
Oh yeah.
Because I didn't want to go out of here like we missed the fire villain that got the cancer.
No, not Firefly. Who's one of the rogues? Why can't I not think of this? Like my brain, the brain fart I'm having right now is bad. I'm just so surprised. It's okay. I'm gonna look it up because this is so
Heat Wave.
Thank you. Holy cow. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Like my brain, like, you know, you got so much stuff, and the recall at my age is not great. But Heat Wave, yeah.
Exactly. I was like, I think he meant Firefly. No, it's Heat Wave.
No,
I bet.
Heat Wave. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I'll remember it forever now with my embarrassment. I can see the bleeding cool. Former Flash writer doesn't remember Heat Wave.
I do want to say thank you very much for joining me. Yeah. This has been a lot of fun, like almost like talking to a friend. So I really appreciate the time and geeking out with me, dude.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love geeking out. So